Hello, good morning. This is Rick Pinion. I'm bringing you today's word for December 3rd, 2014. This message comes as part of a series. The series is entitled Grace-Based Success, where we are learning how to win in life and how to do it God's way by his unearned and amazing grace, putting the spotlight of our life squarely on God and what he's called us to do. So along those lines, we've been studying the life of Joseph and his family. We're going to pick it up where we left off, and the title of today's message is The Blessing of Knowing Who You Are. Today's message is going to be focused on Joseph's dad. His name is Jacob. And we're going to really key in on the fact that Jacob knew who he was. So the blessing of knowing who you are. This is from Genesis chapter 47, verses 7 through 10. By this point in the story, Jacob had brought his family to Egypt. And so Jacob's sons had already 5 of them went with Joseph to meet the king. And so when they met the king, they kind of bowed down before the king, and they were humble before the royal throne and etc. They did the right thing from a protocol perspective as far as they saw it. And so Joseph and his brothers had that conversation with them, but now Joseph is bringing in his father. Now just think about this for a minute. Let's say, put yourself in Joseph's shoes for a minute, right? So 9 years ago, you met this man, the king, Pharaoh. You met him. And the circumstances under which you met him was that you walked into the room as a slave and a prisoner. And you had a conversation with him. The Lord gave you revelation to interpret some dreams. And because of the divine revelation and the favor of God, you walked into the room, yes, a slave and a prisoner, but you walked out of the room as the prime minister of Egypt. And so now it's been 9 years. 7 of those years were good years. And the Lord gave you insight and wisdom and revelation, knowledge and understanding to administrate the land, to administrate the economy, to administrate the kingdom in such a way that you were prepared for the impending famine. The famine came. The famine has been 2 years now into the famine. So you've been with him 9 years. And now this nation or this kingdom, Egypt, is prospering exponentially. Why? Because you guys are the only ones prepared for the famine. And so you got people coming near and far from all over the region, maybe even all over the world, coming to your country, to your nation, to your kingdom, seeking assistance. And your own family has to come. And so your brothers already came in, they humbled themselves, and now your father's about to come in. So you would think that as your father walks in, he's going to walk in just like anybody else would walk in that's coming in asking for assistance. Just like anyone else who will walk in, more than likely, that's going to stand before a king and ask for assistance, that's coming because they need what Egypt has. And so most people come in humble, they bow before the king. Some people even fall, on their face as they stand before the king. And so here's Joseph, and he's waiting on his dad, and his dad is about to walk into the room. And so Jacob walks into the room. This is Genesis chapter 47, and the Bible doesn't give us any indication that Jacob bowed down or fell on his face or anything like that. The Bible just tells us that Jacob walked into the room and he blessed the king. He pronounced a blessing over Pharaoh. He declared a blessing over the king. This isn't to minimize who Pharaoh was, but Jacob was also not minimizing who he was. He knew that Pharaoh had the position. He knew that Pharaoh had the food. He knew that Pharaoh was the king, but he also knew that he was a son of the Most High God, that he was the son of Isaac and the grandson of Abraham. And so the blessing of Abraham was on him. And so he was walking into the room with the blessing on his life. And so he pronounced a blessing over the man that was really positioned there to bless him, because that's the type of confidence that Jacob had. The James Fawcett Brown commentary says of this, watch this. Not only did Jacob pronounce a blessing when he walked in, he had a short conversation with the king, and as he was leaving, he blessed him again. So in Genesis chapter 47, he blessed him in verse 7, he blessed him again in verse 10. That's the type of confidence that Jacob had in who he was and in whose he was. In who he was and in whom God had called him to be. The James Fawcett Brown commentary of this particular passage says, Jacob signalized his entrance by imploring the divine blessing on the royal head. It may easily be imagined what a striking impression the scene would have produced. I mean, can you imagine this guy's walking in and everybody else kind of comes in humble and he comes in confident. Everyone else comes in bowing down and he comes in with his head held high, and he doesn't come to, before he receives anything from Pharaoh, he released a blessing over Pharaoh. He released a blessing on his life. He pronounced a blessing over the king, both at the beginning of the conversation and at the end of the conversation. So what does this mean to you today as you're seeking to become the man, the woman that God has called, destined, designed, and desires for you to be, as you're seeking to experience your own divine success here in this earth, in the only life that that you have and that you're gonna get. So what does this mean to you today? I have 8 things to share with you. Number 1, when you know who you are and what you're called to do, it changes the way you see yourself and the way you see others. Number 2, when you know who you are, you're able to walk into any situation with a level of confidence that cannot be shaken. Number 3, what you're facing is not who you are. Listen to me. What you're facing, if you're going through something right now, what you are facing is not who you are. Jacob went to Egypt to receive assistance from Pharaoh. But his opinion of himself was not based on the situation he was facing. He was facing a famine, but that didn't mean that he had to determine or to establish his identity based on the famine. His identity was established based on the God he was serving, and that was Jehovah. So Jacob's perspective of himself enabled him to walk into the king's palace, and instead of bowing, he blessed him. Instead of bowing, he was blessing. And so when you know who you are, you can pronounce a blessing over those God is using to bless you. Number 4, you don't have to allow the fact that you're going through a difficult time to cause you to think any less of yourself. Your identity should be rooted and grounded in God's divine assignment for your life and nothing else. Conditions will come and go. Seasons will change, sometimes better, sometimes worse. But at the end of the day, your divine assignment will never change. Your divine assignment will remain the same. So if you establish your identity in your divine assignment, in God and what he called you to do, then you won't be moved by circumstances. Whether the circumstances are good or bad, you still know who you are. Watch this. You won't allow yourself to get puffed up with pride when everything is going good, and you won't allow yourself to delve into depression when everything is going bad. At the end of the day, your identity, your perspective of yourself is established in who God called you to be. Number 5, the grace of God is on you to leave a mark in this world that no one else is called to leave. You have a divine assignment and you need to run. You need to do what God has called you to do. Number 6, never get intimidated. Never. By someone else's rank or position. If you know who you are, then you're never intimidated by whom someone else is, right? So if you know who you are, fine. They could be whoever they are, and then you just be whoever you are, but you don't have to be moved by who they are. Number 7, embrace the grace to be you. Jacob was far from perfect, but he was comfortable being Jacob. And that comfort in his own skin and in his own assignment helped him produce a blessing over the most powerful man in the world at his time, and that was Pharaoh. And then number 8, and finally, when you're comfortable being you, you live with unshakable faith, and you get to experience uncommon success. So let's declare this over our lives. So I'm going to lead you in a confession. You decree this. You declare this over your life in faith. Say, Father, I thank you for teaching me about your grace and also my requirement to live by faith. You made plans for me before the world began. For me to complete my divine assignment, I must become comfortable being me and doing what you've called me to do. I declare that I do. I know who I am. I know whose I am. I know what I'm called to do. I know my assignment is tailor-made for me. No one else is called to be me. I celebrate the diversities of giftings and callings without jealousy because I know who I am and I'm comfortable with it. I run my race with your grace at my pace, ready to overcome every challenge I face. No one can beat me being me. And since I know who I am, I'm not intimidated by anyone else. I can release a blessing over the President of the United States. I can decree a blessing over the Queen of England. I don't minimize who they are. I just refuse to minimize who I am. I am who you say I am. I can do what you say I can do. I am called according to your divine plan for my life. I am empowered by your spirit, covered by your blood, protected by your angels, and driven by your purpose for my life. I enter this day and every day determined to be me, and I don't make any excuses for it. I declare this by faith in Jesus' name. Amen. This is today's word. Apply it and prosper. If you're not getting these messages, go to todaysword.org, sign up, you'll get the messages, and they will be a blessing to you. Head into today and every day knowing who you are and knowing whose you are. God bless you.